My name's Adam Grand Mason, and people call me Adam22, and I'm I guess a BMX rider, a podcast host, a bike shop / clothing line owner. For the most part, people know me as the host of No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world.
And so you talked about all the different things you're interested in and stuff. So how did you go from the BMX world to where you are now, No Jumper?
I've been running becomeup.com, which is basically the biggest BMX website and has been since 2006 when I started it. I've been running it for about 10 years. And then a couple of years ago, I just started to get opportunities to do interviews with rappers. I just happened to be friends with this guy, Xavier Wolf, who's a super popular rapper in the underground in LA and beyond for sure. And he basically just did like his first in-depth interview with me. I got a super good reaction. And then like Puya hit me up and he had seen the interview and he was like, bro, I want you to be my first interview. That went great. Then all of a sudden, you know, just more and more opportunities started to pick up. And all of a sudden I found myself in the position of being, I don't know, I guess a quite talked about hip hop interviewer, which is not something I really planned on happening or counted on occurring, but I'm here for it. And I think that, you know, I like that experience from day one of just like, at first I identified the theme of the podcast as just being, these are people I want to have conversations with. Since then, over the course of the past couple of years, I feel like it's narrowed slightly to be younger up and coming artists that I want to help promote and to help bring to the forefront, or at least give them a place to talk or to talk to give them some sense of depth. I was really influenced by Andrew Nazinski, aka Nas, who is like one of the greatest rap journalists of all time. And just ever since I discovered his work and David Drake and a lot of hip hop writers like that, Elliot Wilson, who was like the commander in chief over at XXL during their heyday, guys like that, I was just really influenced by people who I thought treated hip hop with a level of like respect and dignity to what they were doing that I didn't necessarily see, or I hadn't necessarily been like encouraged by other media sources to perceive, I guess. So I was just always attracted to people who sort of legitimized rap, and I was just always a huge fan of it, and I always just liked news sources that treated it with a lot of respect, and over time just sort of got into the position of doing interviews. And that's what I would want to bring to the table, is just to be able to take these SoundCloud rappers or whatever that nobody understands and just be able to like have real conversations with them and see where they're coming from.
Yeah. What do you like about like the podcast format versus like, you know, some of the guys you mentioned, they're writers and stuff. What do you like about podcasts?
For me, I spent some time trying to be a writer, just writing stuff in general, and it never really fit my personality to be sitting alone by myself piecing together words like that. Like, I like being out and about, and then also I like doing social media while I'm out and about. And when it comes to podcasts, to me, it's just, I love just the raw format of just being able to sit down, have a conversation, come to conclusions, be able to change your mind. And that's just, it's so fun to me. And I don't know, to me, it's just a superior form of communication, because I don't watch TV. I haven't had cable since I was like living with my parents. So I don't know. I'm pretty much like solely influenced by the internet and stuff that goes on the internet. So to me, it's like the idea of even having a TV show or whatever, it's like I'm into the idea of hosting a TV show. It's cool. If people give me opportunities to do stuff like that, I'm down. But it's like the real content that I care about is doing podcasts.
Going back a bit, I guess, like, what was your first video experience? Because you started this BMX site. Like, when was that? How did you even get into that?
The BMX site, I just started a blog. Like, I was influenced by Nat Wright and Two Dope Boys and all the early hip hop blogs that I was looking at when I was like a kid, or when I was, 22, 23. So I would just study those blogs and just listen to new music all the time. And after a while, it just occurred to me like, oh, I'm not buying XXL anymore. Like, I don't care about the source anymore, because these blogs have become so important to me in my life. So that just it occurred to me, oh, well, I know a lot about BMX as well. Maybe I can make a blog that's about BMX that is as good as Now Right, or something like that. So that was my mission from the beginning with that, and it went very smoothly, I guess you could say.
You've reached this point with No Jumper. You know you want to contextualize these artists, and now you're essentially a gatekeeper, let's say, for rap right now. When you're choosing who to interview, are you kind of thinking about that, like that position that you have and that power you have, I guess?
Yeah, like I feel like I've been lackadaisical with my responsibility to interview, proper representation of women, for instance. Like I just haven't gone out of my way enough to, because a lot of times I feel like I get kind of lazy and I end up doing interviews that present themselves to me rather than going out of my way. Recently made up with that. I interviewed China Rogers and Rico Nasty back to back, so I got those, or China came out yesterday, but yeah, I definitely think about that in the sense of like, I interviewed Milo Yiannopoulos, who is super controversial. Tons of people hate him. Said stuff that I find super offensive, but I was interested in him at the time. It was over a year ago, and I wanted to do the interview, so I did it. But of course, I want to find a balance in which I'm representing things that are mostly aligned with my politics or what I think. So it's like, if I'm going to interview somebody like Milo because I find that interesting, then it's kind of like the responsibility is on me to find more left-leaning political interviews to do to balance it out, because I don't want to be giving kids the wrong idea. It's a lot of responsibility, especially when, I don't know, to me it's like we should just be having conversations. It's interesting. I want to disagree with people. I want to have people on that I have nothing in common with. I think that's great. But, of course I want to, like, that people who are viewing your podcast from afar, the people who don't really watch it, that those people are forming judgments about your podcast based on the little things that you do, and or not even just your podcast, but your brand. So it's like you kind of want to be really outward with how you want people to perceive you. There's this whole battle because, of course, like my whole thing is, I feel like there's a ton of people in the hip hop media that are feeding off of, gossip and shitting on people and dragging people and creating outrage and all this stuff. And it's like I have people trying to get me to comment on people who I've interviewed who then go on to do bad things or be accused of doing bad things. And I never want to comment on it. And so I ended up thinking about it out loud on the stream last night. Like, why do I not have anything to say about it when somebody that I've interviewed gets caught for doing something? Is because I never wanted to be in a position where I got to shit on somebody's career or do something negative towards them. And of course, I want to be respectful of if there was like a victim, and I don't want to like necessarily allow a platform for them to say something that's disrespectful of someone like that. But I just don't, like the only thing that I want to do in rap is to let up and coming people tell their story or give their career a boost by letting people find out about them. And so I'm just trying to be cautious of not doing things that take away from that, because you don't want to like muddle your message. And for me, like the message, what up, Tony? I feel like I'm super influenced by my mom, because my mom was she just retired. She was a librarian at a community college in Massachusetts, So like my average day growing up was my mom coming home and talking about these like 19-year-old single mothers from fucking Lowell, Massachusetts or whatever. And my mom would just always have these stories about how happy it made her to be able to help them and stuff. Because she's a librarian, which in its like modern sense, she's basically helping them learn to use the internet better, to use Google to be able to like look for jobs or to be able to do better in school, stuff like that. And like that was like what she spent her whole life doing. And I feel like I was kind of influenced by her just coming home every day and telling me about that shit, because I really get a weird pleasure out of having some 19-year-old face tat kid that nobody fucking takes serious and having him on here and letting him actually tell his side of the story. I mean, that to me gives me a lot of joy. So I feel like I'm just kind of chasing after that. And it feels like all the good things that are coming to me in terms of people's opinions about the podcast or opinions on me, it comes from that. It comes from, oh, like he gave this guy an opportunity really early on, and there's like a level of clout or esteem that comes with being the first or early on to give somebody a chance. But I mean, that's good, because that's like, it's just incentivizing good behavior. Like we should be incentivizing media companies in general, not just mine, to try to be early on introducing the world to new artists, because I mean, like what the fuck is your media company if you just like wait for Kanye to say something and that's like the basis of your content? I think we need to be like a little bit more demanding of hip-hop media companies, because when I have the conversation about the ones that are doing good things, I feel like I mostly end up talking about people who are sort of like independent creators, like YouTubers or people that are doing it independently. So, tangent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you are obviously you're helping all these guys, but obviously, like the Milo thing, I saw that and I was kind of surprised. Like, do you feel, whether it's him or even with some of these kids or whatever, do you feel like you want to like push them on things that you disagree with them while you're talking to them, or is that more kind of like you keep away from that during the podcast journey?
Well, I mean, I look at what Charlemagne does, and he loves getting a person on the show and then just basically saying the most honest shit that he knows that everybody at home is thinking in their head. And I think it's great. I think it's great that he does that. I think it's fucking hilarious. Like, even somebody I like Post Malone. But when he said to Post Malone, "What are you doing for Black Lives Matter?" and Post Malone didn't know what the fuck to say, I thought that was one of the funniest things I ever seen on the internet. But at the same time, I don't like to do that. Like to me, I want to have an honest, open conversation. If I'm going to have somebody on the podcast, I want to be able to support them, and I want to at least support them in the sense that I think their music is good, and then if there's something that they've maybe done fucked up, I want to give them a chance to talk about it, I guess. Like, I have Famous Dex on the podcast, and he sat there and talked to me about the whole situation with him beating the girl up, which is obviously, like, there's a ton of people that will not fuck with Dex because of that on a corporate level and stuff like that. And I feel like, as fucked up as that video is and as wrong as what he did in that video was, he came on the podcast and was very humble about it and very honest and very open and very transparent. And I think he won a lot of people over. I think a lot of people saw that and they were like, you know what, this is a dude who fucked up and is willing to own it. And I mean, it's weird to create a space for that because at the same time you don't want to be normalizing fucked up behavior. But I was happy to be able, well, Dex is an actual friend of mine. I was happy to be able to give him a platform for that, I guess, but it's a fucking balance. Let's say that. It's not easy to it's not easy to avoid controversy in 2017 when you're making content on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, obviously, it's your prerogative anyway. Some people are gonna.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I fall back on is that it's like nobody gave me a fucking chance. Like, nobody gave me a platform. It's like if you're a radio DJ and you say something really offensive and people are like, let's get him out of here, let's fucking get him fired, whatever. It's like, well, there's at least a case to be had there because there's a major corporate conglomerate that's providing that person with a job, that chose to give that person a job. With me, it's like, I think that's the only reason that people fuck with my shit is I just feel like a fan, which is what I am. It's like, I feel like a dude who's just kind of outside the industry, who's just into it. So.
I know, I was thinking before this, I was thinking like, when we're thinking about, say, 2000s rap, we might go look back at the music videos, or 90s, we might like listen to a Stretch and Bobbito podcast. Is that not something you think about? Because to me, you're like defining a certain segment of rap for like basically the future. You know what I mean?
The idea of being able to like create content that lives on for a long time afterwards is like the holy grail of content on the internet. Is like to make something that 8 years from now is still going to be getting 1 million views in a year on YouTube or whatever. And I've done interviews that I'm like, okay, that is like, even if this person doesn't blow up a year from now, 2 years from now, it's like we're going to be looking at that interview 10 years from now because that person has so much talent that I feel like no matter what, even if, and a lot of times I'm like, I don't think they're going to make it as a rapper, but they have something about them and maybe they haven't fully sorted it out yet. And that I think is like, my favorite, one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, he just wrote a book called like Perennial Sellers. This is about like creating content, specifically books in his case, that like continue to sell consistently over the years because they're about topics that are so relatable that over time they continue to be important, like even way down the line. And like when I did that XXX interview, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but like there's no way that his career ends in a way or that his career goes in any way that doesn't continue to be interesting. It's like that interview is a screenshot or a snapshot of time of where he was at, where I was at to a certain extent. He's got all his friends in the room, And it's just like, I look back at that and I'm like, I can't believe that I have that documented, that I got to have that. Because it is really, for me, it's about the conversation. I just wanted to talk to him. I just wanted to know what his deal was. And then the fact that it's online, that it's monetized in some way, that other people get to like enjoy it. And that, because, okay, this is the factor that really gets me off, is the fact that if I sit here and have a conversation with you for an hour, and then we meet up next week and we have another conversation, that next conversation is going to be more advanced, more intelligent, and just better than the conversation, than the first one. And then if we keep doing that, if you keep doing that every single week, and especially if you're open-minded and inquisitive and you want to learn, you want to be better, then eventually you're just going to be having a conversation that is at a way higher, more advanced, progressed level than where you were before. And that's the best thing that I think I could hope for, is just to keep doing this content until eventually we've just reached better thoughts, better consensuses. And I don't know, it's like, maybe it's kind of idealistic. Maybe the conversation will end up just like treading water over time. Maybe it very rarely advances or whatever, but I don't think that's true at all. When I look back at interviews I did a year or two ago, I could hear myself say something that I completely disagree with now, just because I feel like I've grown as a person. And that's ultimately like just what I want what is up, Wes? That's ultimately just what I want the podcast to bring to the table. To me, like, I did that XXX interview when he had like 16,000 SoundCloud followers, and I knew about him for maybe like 4 months before that. And it's like you can hear the rumblings. Like if an artist has a really strong fan base, I just end up hearing about it in the comments, and you can tell when it's organic and when it's bullshit. Dudes telling their fans to spam your comments or whatever. And with X, it's like right away when I listened to him, I just knew that there was something really interesting going on. And I'll admit that I didn't totally understand, but I wanted to do the interview early on. I just felt like there was something special about him. And then obviously he's exceeded even my wildest expectations for what could have potentially happened with his career. So, that's the kind of thing that I'm just excited to be able to be a part of. Like, I just did a Rico Nasty interview, and to me, she's so cool and just like funny and just great as a person. And a bunch of her music is fucking awesome too. And it's like, say she becomes, fucking Cardi B, because like 2 months ago, we did not know that Cardi B was gonna be at where she is right now. Because I was so wrong about Cardi B. I will take that fucking L. I said, because I loved Cardi B as an Instagram comedian or a Twitter comedian or whatever, and then she started rapping, and of course my gut instinct was just to be like, man, this is stupid, like fucking this is gonna be terrible, blah blah blah. I hated on it, but now I can fully accept that I was wrong. Sorry, Cardi, because she's amazing, and she's like, I don't know if I was I need to do a deep dig. Maybe if I said that I didn't like her a year ago, maybe I was right about her music then, and she's gotten better, but whatever. Either way, like if Rico Nasty is as big as Cardi B in a year from now, and I just so happened to be there to get an interview with her early on, like, whoa, that's the fucking sickest thing I could ever imagine.
Yeah. And like with XXX, did you end up managing him somewhat? Like, what was your involvement with him after the interview?
With X, we did the interview, and from very early on, he was like the most animated, the most enthusiastic, the most loving person that I maybe had ever interviewed, in terms of just showering me with thanks and telling me from very early on, like, yo, like I want you to manage me, this kind of stuff. He was just so, like, and everyone has this experience with him too, because I was listening to Vanessa from XXL explain what it was like having him on the cover, and she said the same thing, that she's like, he was just calling her and thanking her, and I think that that's just how he is. He's just a very, very, like, if he likes you so much that he's gonna just overwhelm you with praise. And then if he, for whatever reason, like just sort of decides that you're not in his circle anymore, then all of a sudden he just stops talking to you. And like, for me, it's like we had a good relationship, we were talking and stuff, he ends up going to jail, and then he just started hitting me up a bit more, and one day we were just having a conversation on the phone, and this is after he's already like really popping, and he was just like, bro, I want you to manage me. And for me, it's like, that's a very serious discussion, very serious decision if I were to ever manage an artist, because I haven't done that so much. But there was something about the way he was telling me to tweet it that I just was like, oh, he gets that this is like, that me tweeting it is more important than it actually happening. And he's like, tweet it right now, I'll retweet it. So I was like, oh, like, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. It just matters that people will freak the fuck out over it. So let's have some fun with it. And then, I don't know, maybe I think I just didn't do a good enough job of like staying in touch with them and everything. And it's weird with rappers. It's hard for me to be in like it's hard for me to stay close with rappers because at some point they're also egotistical. They end up feeling like I'm associating myself with people that are coming for their title, their spot. And I'm not saying that about him, but I am saying that effect sort of like trickles down into stuff with artists as they become bigger. Because a lot of times bigger artists don't really feel that good about me giving tons of underground rappers a chance. So sometimes that sort of wears away at my relationships with different artists. And that's not specifically the case with X, but you know, there is that kind of effect. And it's like, for me, it's like, I don't want to spend my whole life like managing like a teenage rapper who's crazy. No offense to him, but he's crazy. You know, I like, that would be cool. Like I believe in him like crazy, but it's like at the end of the day, I want to make content. So managing somebody is like, if I was going to do that, I would have to be able to do that in a context in which it was, you know, made more accessible for me, because I have to, like, I'm committed to spending huge amounts of my time just creating content for the people. And if I end up putting all my time and effort into one artist, then I feel like that's just going to get me too far away from that.
Yeah, I mean, real management is like a full-time job, right?
Yeah. I mean, how many things am I really supposed to do? Like, that's just another one that I don't really feel like I need to add to the list. But he is, I mean, in my mind, X is the greatest artist probably that I've interviewed, at least from like an underground perspective, in the sense that he's so creative, he's so talented, he's so good. No matter what happens, as long as he stays out of jail, he's going to continue to be by far, like I cannot imagine a scenario in which he becomes irrelevant. It's just no way.
And you obviously get social media as well. He's like asking you to.
Yeah, I remember one time he penned this like suicide note on fucking Twitter, and I had been having like normal conversations with him throughout the day on the phone while I was in jail. And then all of a sudden this fucking tweet pops up that's basically like, I don't want to be with this world type thing. That basically it was like a girl that he was talking to that probably had to be the one that tweeted it for him. And everybody's hitting me up. What happened? I'm like, I talked to him earlier today and he seemed fine.
Kind of wild now, and you compare that to like wrestling in terms of building character and stuff. Do you think that means that these artists are like putting less into their art and into their music because they're also focused on, you know, building these outsized characters?
I mean, every rapper has to be focused on their music. Like when you look at Lil Pump and people want to say, oh, Lil Pump's a cartoon character, Lil Pump's a fucking, he's a rugrat, he's whatever. Like people say that shit, but okay, Lil Pump just had like 10 songs in like the top 25 rap songs or SoundCloud or some bullshit, some statistic that you can pull up that is like, I forget it, I tweeted it, but it's crazy. Like his music really is that popular. When him and SmokePurpp put songs out, they get 5, 10, 15 million views, whatever, on SoundCloud, or plays on Sound. When SmokePurpp and Lil Pump put out songs, they get 5, 10, 15 million plays on SoundCloud. They get, you know, 10 million, 20 million plays on YouTube, shit like that. And it's like, yeah, the fact that they are wild, exaggerated cartoon characters helps, but it's not the whole story, because people really do fuck with their music. And but I love when I get people who do get that, though, because I was on the New York Times podcast with John Caramonica, who definitely has been a gigantic influence on me. And you know, it was so good to be on that podcast with him, because he so clearly actually understood the real value of Lil Pump and SmokePurpp's music. And it's not just a meme, it's not just a joke. There actually is validity to what they're doing. And I was just like, I said to John, I was like, he said, what's your favorite Lil Pump song? And I said, Flex Like Ooh. And he was just like, yes, that is the best Lil Pump song. And I was just so happy. I'm like, I'm so glad that we are some grown-ass white dudes who can have a serious discussion about the best Lil Pump song, and that neither of us had any shame about admitting to that being a real conversation that we were having.
Yeah. What is the value of those guys, like, to you as a fan and as someone in the scene like Pump, SmokePurpp, and these guys who people see as kind of cartoon characters?
I mean, the value in any rap music or any art is to be able to see an authentic, real perspective from that person at that point in their life. And so if, like, it scares me that Lil Pump does as many drugs as he does, but at the same time, I think I'm lucky as a fan of the art form that I get to see what a fucking crazy, rich, successful 16-year-old kid coming from fucking nothing in Florida, like what kind of music he makes and what his perspective on life is and how that perspective is going to change over time. And the fact that it's popular makes it more interesting because you know that it's resonating with kids and that there's something about what he's doing. And people tend to only take these things seriously after the fact. Like, I bet that you would have got a lot of grief for having a serious opinion about grunge at a certain point in time, you know? Like, oh, Nirvana. Like, I remember when I was a 13-year-old Nirvana fan and people were acting like Nirvana was corny because they were all into hardcore or punk or whatever, you know, more serious metal or whatever like other people were into. But I mean, as fucked up as like Kurt Cobain's story is, it's like that's an important story, and I think we're all lucky as fans of music to be able to sit there and look at the art and to take in what he was going through. And I mean, I hope and pray that like Lil Pump cleans up his act at some point before he goes too far in terms of doing drugs and stuff like that. But you can't deny that it's a fascinating thing to watch take place. Like you hear it, like when I listen to Gucci, like I just religiously listen to the whole Gucci catalog, like especially because I just read that book. I just can't help but just keep listening to it, and you can just hear it in his voice and in his lyrics, like what he was going through at all those times, and the book helps contextualize that, and that's just so fascinating to me to be able to see the struggle of Gucci Mane through his music. And a lot of people don't want to give Gucci that. Like, they don't want to be like, oh, this is actually an authentic like document about your life. Like, they don't want to respect or acknowledge rap enough to say that. And there's a lot of rappers who are bullshitting their way through their songs and telling you a bunch of fucking stupid shit, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And anybody who sold drugs could very, very clearly identify that in a lot of rappers' lyrics. But you know, the cream of the crop rises to the top. Pen drop. And in terms of rappers being wrestlers or whatever, a lot of times people will be like, oh, look at this guy, like he's fake. He said all this shit in this song and then like, and it wasn't true. But it's like a lot of these rappers, they just fucking speak shit into existence. Like they're talking all this bullshit and then one day they fucking blow up and all that shit is real. And it's, I don't know, it's crazy to watch because from my perspective, some of the people I've interviewed over the years have been the fakest fucking people I ever met in my life, and there's absolutely nothing real about what they said. And you know, I didn't even feel comfortable asking them about some of their lyrics because it was so obvious that they were lying. And then I've also interviewed people that it was obvious that they wouldn't talk about a lot of things that they talk about in their music with me because they are so seriously and authentically what they say they are.